Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's virtual plant clinic. My name is Bill Lester. I'm with University of Florida IFAS Extension Service here in beautiful, sunny, and warm Hernando County this morning. And joining me is one of our Master Gardener volunteers, Bernie. Good morning, Bernie.
Good
And
morning.
boom, look who shows up just in time. Our Florida Friendly Landscape Coordinator, Colby Pitts, is here with us also. Good morning, Colby. How are you?
Good morning. I want to apologize for my lack of punctuality. The phones at the utilities department are going crazy.
Probably everybody asking about when it's going to rain and how come I'm getting in trouble for watering my lawn.
That's definitely part of it. I do kind of want to give a little PSA while I'm while we're talking about this.
Mhm.
You may have gotten a late notice on your watering bill, and that's not because you missed your bill. Just pay the current due balance. It'll be okay. That's the current guidance. It's just kind of going over with the billing issues that we had in the past few weeks. So that's for Hernando County residents. Just be sure to pay attention to how much you actually owe, the current due, and don't worry about the past due balance that'll be rolled in. You were unable to do it with even with your auto pay. It just didn't go all at the same time. That's what I'm getting. I'm looking. I had 6 missed calls in the time it took me to do the setup. So that's where we're at over here. Anyway.
Well, it was really handy when Lily was over there because if I ever had a problem with my water bill, I just complained to her about it. She'd tell me that she couldn't do anything about it, but it gave me somebody to complain to. And I always enjoyed that.
Yeah, certainly. I can't do anything about it. Really, it's the best thing I can do is, oh well, I guess I'll just tell whoever can help you. But I'm not much help when it comes to billing.
Well, I'm sure people, whether they be in Hernando County or elsewhere, are all kind of wondering when's it going to start raining? Because I know there have been some scattered showers. We were in Tampa a couple days ago, and it was beautiful and sunny outside. We walk outside, and it's coming down in buckets. They had a little storm come over, and they must have gotten a quick inch or so of rain. It rained like crazy for 20 minutes, and then blew over. Sun came back out. But my
Yeah,
yard, no such luck. Sunny,
no,
dry.
it's super dry at my house too.
My lawn is toast. It's like the Sahara Desert. It's like dust.
It's funny you mentioned the little pocket showers. My little sister graduated high school yesterday, and this past weekend we had her graduation party. And we were looking at the forecast, making sure with the time it's like, oh, it's not gonna rain, and then sure enough, right as people are there, everyone's outside having a good time, and I look on the radar. It looks kind of rough outside. I was looking at the radar, and there is the smallest patch of rain. It's like just over my mom's house and nowhere else. I was like, oh, well, that's just goes to show you
Yep,
can't
you
plan
got that
anything.
10% chance. It's got to rain on somebody. So maybe it's going to be you. Maybe it won't be you for quite some time, but it will begin raining eventually. Where technically rainy season begins June 1st, but it rarely starts on June 1st. Starts a couple weeks earlier, a couple weeks later, varies a little bit. Don't worry, it'll rain eventually. Until then, you're going to have to water things, whether you have a vegetable garden or a lawn. Here in Hernando County, we are under once a week irrigation restrictions. So you can only water that lawn 1 day a week and on your day. And it's between what, 6 p.m. and 8 a.m.?
You are allowed to water either before 8 a.m. on your day, so that's 12 a.m. to 8 a.m., or after 6 p.m. to 11:59. You cannot do both.
So you discourage watering from 6 a.m. until 8 a.m., like the whole time period.
Well,
That'd be
in
a little bit
between,
too much water.
in between, yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely.
Mhm.
Um, you got to remember. I think it's really important. Um, Remember to calibrate your irrigation systems. It's really not that hard to know how much water when we're talking, like inches of water that you're putting down. Um, and something that literally left over from me are some tuna cans that I have in a cabinet behind
Mhm.
me. And a really easy way to do that is you spread those tuna cans out in an area around in one of your irrigation zones. Let it run for 10 minutes, and then you can stick a ruler down in those tuna cans, and however much water is in that tuna can, that's how much water you're putting down. And maybe one of you guys can remind everybody about how much per watering event we're looking for them to put down on.
Half inch to three
Um,
quarters of an inch.
Yep.
Less than a half
there
inch, you
you go.
don't water deep enough. More than three quarters of an inch, you're wasting money. So,
There you go. So
And very important that you go out there and check those sprinkler heads and check your system on a regular basis. If you have a service that cuts your lawn and it's a nice young man, a really huge riding lawnmower, they put a beading on your sprinkler heads. So you're going to have to check them frequently because they get broken, they get bent, they get pointed where they should be watering in this direction, they're watering in a different direction. You're just going to have to go out there and check them. Otherwise, you're running your irrigation and you're not putting water where you want to put it, or you have a little volcano or fountain in the middle of the night shooting water up 20 feet in the air. That happens. These things are just made
yeah.
out of PVC. They break pretty easily.
yeah,
Last
especially
year
if
it,
you're
it it didn't start raining until the third week of June, and then it rained so much that we ended up that a lot of plants got damaged from overwatering. And you have to remember that the visual symptoms of overwatering and underwatering are pretty much identical. So
Mm-hmm.
you can't really look at the lawn and say, oh, it's got too much water or too little water, unless you know exactly what's been going on. So uh, if your yard is full of plants that are only there when it's wet, you're probably watering too much. And if it's uh, like an oasis, and every time a dog walks across the yard, there's big cloudy footprints, little clouds of dust underneath him, it's probably too dry. But other than those conditions, it's really hard to tell. The top couple of inches dry out pretty quick. So that's the reason you need a half inch. A half inch will provide water down to 8 inches. Three quarters of an inch will provide water down to about a foot, and then beyond that, you're not adding any additional water as far as usable water for the plants. But remember, uh, once if you underwater, once it dries, the first top couple of inches, if the plants don't have a good root structure, uh, they do start to suffer. So a lot of people have that problem that they keep the grass mowed real short. And if you do that, the root structure stays real short. So if you mow St. Augustine at 2 inches, the root structure is only 2 inches long.
Mm-hmm.
And the top 2 inches dry out in a day or two, and it no longer is getting water. So the big trick on a St. Augustine lawn is mow it at 4 inches. You get an 8 inch root structure, and the once a week watering works. If you don't mow it correctly, then it always looks like it's because it's not getting enough water, and it's really not getting enough water because you mowed it too short. So
Yeah.
that's my tip for the week, for the month, for the year. Mow the grass, mow the St. Augustine at 4 inches. That is so depressing to have people come in, bring a lawn sample, and they say, "Oh, we've been mowing at 4 inches," and I put a ruler on it, and it's an inch and a half. So, guys have lied historically about how long things are. Period. So, get a ruler, check your
We
lawn.
have them here. We have
We
them in
all
our
have
office.
little star on here, a
I don't have
little
one in
star
reach, but I
at
have the
four
one.
inches. Stick it down in the ground, and if the grass doesn't come up to the little star, you've got a problem.
We even show you where 4 inches is. So when you put this down, the grass should be technically this high. And that would be a good deep St. Augustine lawn. So from the ground to the top of the blades, after you cut it, that's how St. Augustine is. We don't make those rules. That's just the nature of that species of grass. It grows healthier and better and stronger when it's taller. It'll make deeper roots, which helps, during dry times. And a lot of good things happen when you cut that St. Augustine high. It shades out a lot of the weeds because a lot of weeds stay right at ground level. So it shades them out and they're not going to get a good start. The grass will get thicker and help to push the weeds out so the weeds don't have room, bare dirt to germinate and get started. And that's the key to a healthy St. Augustine lawn. So many people want to start with water and fertilizer. That's usually not their issue. It's not a shortage of water or a shortage of fertilizer. Cutting too short, cutting too often, parking vehicles on St. Augustine, broken irrigation, the neighbor's dog always using the same spot in your front yard as a little bathroom. So those are the kind of problems that we actually see with lawns. I'm not sure if I've ever told somebody, go home and water your lawn and fertilize it, that's going to fix it, because it's never the solution for their problem. Sarah, you're very welcome. We are here for you guys. So if you didn't tune in and listen and ask your questions, we probably wouldn't show up. Here's a good question from Cassie. Are there seeds of some sort that can be put down for a good grass alternative? So any ideas, guys?
Well, there's several things you could use as a grass alternative. You could use perennial peanut. Um, you could use uh, Mimosa strigolosa, the little pink puff balls. It depends on one, what your HOA requires, and two, how you feel about lawns. Um, you can go buy wildflower seeds and have a wildflower flower lawn, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that if you like it. And
You got
I
to
like
remember to
this field book where you just go in and you keep it mowed and let things grow that want to grow. There's a handful of things that you want to get rid of. You don't want thistles. You don't want the little thing with the uh, little thorns on it, the little balls with the thorns.
Dan Spurs.
So those
Nobody
kind of
wants the answers.
no, you get rid of. But uh, for the most part, if you just let things go, you can mow it and mow it a little high and it'll be green. The We call those 30-30-30 lawns. At 30 feet, 30 mile an hour, uh, they look pretty good. They look nice and green, and nobody knows the difference. So depends.
You have to remember to kind of what you're using what you're using it for, because things like perennial peanut sometimes don't stand up to being trampled all over all the time. So if you got a couple kids outside playing football or something, perennial peanut might not be the best option. Sometimes grass is the right plant, but that's you have to take in what you're planning on using that area for when you're making your plant choice.
The
And
big
maybe
thing. Go ahead, Jim or Bill.
maybe you can have just a small area of grass for the kids to play on, and then larger areas with ground covers and filler material, because that's going to be a lot easier to maintain and keep healthy and manage than a huge lawn. I see a lot, not nearly as many houses anymore, but still a lot of houses where, oh my God, it must be like an acre of grass out front. Sometimes you go
Oh yeah.
out in the countryside and you'll see somebody with a house way up on a hill and it's all fenced in, and they have like 5 acres of lawn, and they're out there on a riding lawnmower. Oh my God, I wouldn't do that. I would either get farm animals to eat that grass, or I put in fruit trees. I do something. I would not be spending days out there cutting acres of grass for no good reason. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me, but you need to think about what your goal is first. When it comes to ground covers, I put a link in the chat. And if you go to YouTube and look in the little search bar for Hernando County Government, they have a YouTube channel, and they're under the Florida Friendly Landscape playlist. All kinds of videos and recorded classes on lawn and turf grass substitutes and different things that somebody could use as a ground cover to replace a lawn with.
We really don't
also,
have many choices in lawn and grasses. So the St. Augustines, which there's a half a dozen, 3 or 4 of which are readily available. The Bahias, there's a couple. The Bermudas, there's several of the Bermudas, improved Bermudas, none of which are truly great lawns. But if you take 1 or 2 of those lawns and mix in some of these other things, there's some clovers now that there's some white clover that actually will grow here in Florida, and overseed in the winter with some rye. You can have a nice green lawn year round, relatively low maintenance. It's not going to be a beautiful grass, but it's going to be a nice lawn. And there's a big difference. If you are somebody that has $1 million home and you want a really nice look, it really makes sense to spend the money and do the lawn. I mean, spending $1,000 on a lawn on a $1 million house makes sense, but spending $1,000 on a lawn when you've got $150,000 2 acres really doesn't make that much sense. So, why add irrigation expenses and all those other things when there are some things you can do, and it just depends on how you were raised.
I wish I could find a house on 2 acres for $150,000.
Well, I'm looking at the people that bought 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That obviously that's not a case now. But there were people.
No, I understand.
You understand what I mean?
We're not here for real estate advice.
Or one of those five-room block homes that Florida was famous for. Back in 1958, giving away things here, my uncle built a subdivision on the east side of Orlando. The house is sold for $8,000, $9,000 with the patio, and $10,000 with the patio and the pool.
Wow.
Those houses are $270,000 now. I'm just amazed. But so if you bought a house 50 years ago, you really are in a position to sell, but you're going to have to die when you leave, because you can't go any place and replace them, obviously.
No, I guess 20 years ago, instead of learning how to read or whatever, I should have been buying a house.
The question on watering, the problem with the soil is that when it gets really dry, it becomes hydrophobic. It does not like water. Water doesn't go very far. The truth is, it's very, very difficult to break that condition. It's almost impossible using hand watering to do it, because you can't afford the amount of water it takes. Mm-hmm. But the thing that happens in the rainy season is we put down a half or 3/4 or 1 inch today. We put down 1 1/4 inches tomorrow. We put down a 1/2 inch the next day. We put down 3 inches on the weekend. And by the end of a week, all that problem is gone away. So it really doesn't make sense to spend the money to break the hydrophobic condition. if the rainy season's going to do it for you. But it's amazing if you take a potted plant and water it and do a nice job, and then you go out and then you scrape the soil off, you find out a half inch down, it's totally dry and powdery. So watering is one of those things that becomes an art.
Yeah, you really need a long, slow rainfall to soak everything and get it well watered, and then fairly regular rain after that. And that's what we normally have as a general rule during rainy season. Sometimes a little wetter, sometimes a little drier. Um, Cassie says she's got those thorny vines with the great big bulbs to control. Yeah, I have them in my hedges in my front yard also, and that's just a long term, either digging them out or you keep cutting back the vines as they come up, and you keep doing that, and you're going to win eventually.
Yeah, treat them with triclopyr. Um, uh, Turns out that that's probably the best shot. And if you let them get 2 feet and hit the 2 feet with triclopyr and keep doing that, do that 3 or 4 times a year. Takes about 3 years. They finally run out of energy and they'll be gone. But otherwise, as long as you just keep cutting them back, they pretty much keep returning. That little bulb has got to do a lot of growing before it runs out of energy.
Bassem has an excellent question here, that comes up for us and is in the back of our minds quite a bit when looking at people's lawn problems and trying to diagnose it and come up with suggestions and ways to fix it. He asked, does the type of soil that we grow the lawn in have any effect on lawn health? When it comes to St. Augustine, yes, it does. We have a number of different types of soil here in Florida. You may think that it's all just sand, and most all of it is one type of sand or another, but you can have sands that are what they call excessively drained, which means the water goes through it so quickly that the sand doesn't hold water well for long at all. Raising the level of organic matter by using compost or something else in the soil always helps when growing a lawn, a vegetable garden, bushes, pretty much anything. But certain sandy soils is very difficult to grow a lawn in because it's not going to hold the water and it's going to dry out very quickly. And it really helps to increase your disease problems. And that's a big problem that we have right here in Hernando County. Other counties are different. Other soils are different. Your soil might be different from mine, might be different from Bernie's. It varies quite a bit. There are areas in Central Florida where St. Augustine grows really well, and it usually goes down to the type of soil that you're growing it in, because some soils are just better for growing it than others. So yes, it does have a big impact.
Also, the pH of the soil is very important. If you want to put in Bahia and you have a pH above 7, the Bahia is never going to work out right. Uh, Before you establish a Bahia lawn, you really should have a soil test, find out the pH, and if it's more than 6.5, probably should consider something else.
We got a question from Chatting with Ales here. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Who has blossom end rot on their peppers and tomatoes, which is a very common problem. It is when you're growing tomatoes or peppers and the plants grow and they flower, and now you have tomatoes and peppers on the plants. The far side, not the end that's connected to the stem, but the other end of the fruit gets a black or brown spot on it, which rots, and the tomato is going to be bad. That's from a lack of calcium. You can, when you fertilize the plants, make sure that you're giving it adequate amounts of calcium. You can spray it or treat it with calcium nitrate. That is a form of calcium that will help to turn around the deficiency. But any of the peppers and tomatoes that you already have on the plants with that spot, you can't like go back and reverse the spot or fix it or change it. You can treat the plant, make sure it has plenty of calcium, and that's going to then the new flowers that turn into tomatoes should not have that problem. That's a pretty common problem. Oh, Teresa is back here with us. I know she was busy doing something. So Teresa did put a link to a publication up there about some of the causes and prevention for blossom end rot. Something else that can cause blossom end rot is your soil may have plenty of calcium in it, but you have to have really good water flow through the plant to move the calcium up into the plant, all the way to the top, out the stems, through the fruit to the far end of the fruit to get the calcium there, because it's an important component in cell walls. So if you don't have good water flow in your plants, the calcium is not going to get from the soil to where it needs to be on the far end of that tomato. So we've seen problems with blossom end rot in greenhouses, and the problem isn't a lack of calcium in the soil, it's a lack of water movement in the plants. And they fixed it with increasing air movement. They put some fans in the greenhouse. Now the water goes in the roots, goes through the plant, leaves through the stomata, the little holes in the leaves, and everything is flowing and moving just great. Calcium moves up to the tomatoes and no blossom end rot. So there's a couple different problems that could be at play here. For a lot of people, it's just a shortage of calcium in the soil, and being careful to add some kind of calcium supplement either when you're planting the plants or after they're growing is going to help a lot with that.
Using tomatoes and peppers are good. A good application for that, like low flow micro irrigation, to help make sure that you have like uniform soil moisture uh, in those things like tomatoes, bell peppers, things like that. That might be a good idea too, if the cause of it is, your water movement and not just a lack of calcium, which to my knowledge, was the pretty much why most people get that issue.
You guys go ahead and chat. I got to look something up here.
Okay. Yeah, the blossom end rot thing, we usually get about a half a dozen people a season to call on that. And it's nice because that's one of the easier things to fix. And uh, usually the people that haven't experienced it are in a panic situation. So you're able to really calm them down and leave them feeling good that one, it's not something that's going to take over forever. And it's curable and it's easily curable and it's common. So it is amazing how people that move here and start gardening uh, actually panic fairly quick because things that worked for them that they've done all their life up north now become a real serious chore. They don't understand what's happening and they don't know why it's different than it was. And their lilacs died and now their tomatoes aren't doing well. And so you go through the whole story and everybody seems to understand and be happy. No, calcium nitrate is a mineral, and
Yeah, inorganic.
it does not need to be special organic because it's the same product no matter whether you would call it organic or not. It's calcium nitrate.
Yeah,
I
calcium
think I think a lot of
nitrate,
times.
if you're looking for something that's certified or considered organic, calcium nitrate is probably not going to fall under the organic header. There are other organic sources of calcium, but they're going to take a certain amount of time to break down into the soil and make that extra calcium available to your plants. So things like eggshells, bone meal, gypsum, they all contain calcium for your plants, but all of them are going to have to break down for a certain period of time. The calcium's not available to your plant like today, right away. So calcium nitrate is going to be available to your plant roots much faster and it's going to solve the problem, but it's technically not organic. If you're a commercial organic farmer, you probably would not be able to use that on your farm. But for a homeowner, you get to make the choices. So it's your decision if you want to use it, even though knowing that it's technically not organic or not.
Yeah.
Okay, we got we have a lot of engagement here today. We're finally getting some questions. So here's one from Ian. I haven't read it yet. So he says, "Good morning, guys. Thanks for all of your insight. I have plants all around my pool area, such as palms, ferns, bananas, white bird of paradise, pentas, Trinette schefflera, hibiscus, and crotons. Sounds beautiful and sounds colorful and tropical also. He says, everything is flourishing except my crotons, which are darkening and dropping their leaves. It's my first time growing them and I'm stumped. Any help would be appreciated. It helps us to know where in Florida you live. In South Florida, crotons are going to do great. Crotons are a tropical plant. Here in Central Florida or north of us, crotons take either a little bit of damage in the winter or a lot of damage. They could be frozen during a bad freeze and completely killed. So crotons may have leftover damage from this past winter. They're losing their old leaves, and hopefully they're going to sprout new leaves and new growth now because we're technically heading into spring and summer. If you live in Miami, your croton shouldn't be doing this. So there's some other kind of underlying problem.
Well, don't those croton leaves as like the leaves mature, don't they start out pretty light colored and then they darken over time? Like and then when they're old, they darken and fall off. That's what I thought anyway.
Yeah.
So it may be, I mean, depending on how, drastic your leaf loss is, it may just be the life cycle of the plant.
Yeah, and it probably is. And Ian's right here in Spring Hill. I always have to ask because we have people on here from, oh my gosh,
All over the
Michigan
place.
down to Miami, basically, and everywhere in between. So here in Spring Hill, there's a good chance it's leftover winter damage, and it's just dropping its old leaves because leaves have an expiration date. They're not good forever. So those crotons are going to drop some of their old leaves. Now your croton should have new growth and new little sprouts. You should see at the very top tip and any branches along the stem some new growth where it's going to get new leaves.
Also, is the water from the pool getting on the crotons?
Yeah, you have to always keep that in mind because whether you have a salt system or a chlorine system, there's going to be chlorine in the pool. That's what kills the bacteria and keeps everything clean. So if that water is getting splashed out onto your plants, some plants are going to be damaged by that. Other plants, not so much. And it all really depends on the plant and its salt tolerance and chlorine tolerance. Sarah says that her crotons do that if they get too dry or too much sun. Yeah, crotons, crotons grow alongside of the highway in Costa Rica. I've been to Costa Rica and it's pretty darn tropical, and you just see them growing like weeds in the woods and alongside of the highway. So they like it where it's warm, sunny, and wet and rainy. I've had them before, and they do fantastic during the summer when we get a lot of really regular rain. They do terrible in the winter when it gets too cold, and they don't do as well in spring and fall when it's dry and really sunny and hot. So giving them a little bit of extra water is going to really help, and hopefully they're getting some new growth and some new buds and new shoots on them.
Yeah, I found that they were annuals most years when I was planting them. I really
It can
like
be.
them, but I had a terrible time keeping them going more than 1 year. So they really hate the winters here.
Yeah, I had a neighbor, and they treated them like annuals. They'd plant them in the spring. They look great all summer. They get freeze damage in the winter. They just rip them out and buy new ones and put them in. Boom, problem solved. They look great.
Yeah.
Start, and it really depends on what your goal is. And there's extra cost involved, but if depending on what you're trying to accomplish, maybe buying new ones every spring is going to accomplish that. Um, Caring for them and covering them during the winter when it gets really cold helps to reduce that wintertime damage.
Yeah, they don't like frost at all.
No, they are tropical. So, and they will grow here in Hernando County. The further south you go, the better they're going to do. And for Buddy up there in the Panhandle, they probably need to be in containers and brought in during the winter, or plan on replacing them every spring. Yeah, and even Sarah says that she's in Brooksville and she feels like she's pushing the zone with them here in the winter. I always felt like that too. I had some crotons out by my pool, and the Hawaiian tea or Thai plants, the kind of pinkish leaf ones, they freeze every winter. Even if it doesn't get cold in the winter, it seems like they freeze. They are the first to get damaged on a cold night. So it's really, really pushing them also. All goes back to right plant in the right place, and how much maintenance do you want to put into it? I don't like to cover stuff on cold nights. I will if I have to, but I don't like it. But I tell you what, this past winter, surprisingly warm. My bananas got no damage for the first time in years. And I have a couple bunches of lemongrass, did not freeze at all. And this spring they flowered. So I got the little, and I mean, they're not very attractive flowers, but they did set seeds. I need to go out there and pick all the seeds, bring them in for Teresa. So yeah, those crotons can burn pretty easily. So hey guys, if any other questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. We'll try to squeeze them in this morning. You guys planning on being here next Thursday?
I intend.
Colby? He's checking his schedule.
I have to look, actually. I'm trying to find my.
I'll be on vacation next Thursday, so I won't be here.
Well,
Who's
one
good?
of the two of you has to be here for me to be here. So that's how simple it is.
Yes, I will be here next Thursday. I knew I had one coming up that I wasn't going to be here, but that's not till the 20th.
We're
So
going to make
we're
him
on-
sorry that he's gone.
I will be here on the 20th, so that's no problem.
Okay.
Okay, so somebody will be here next week, and I will be here on the 20th.
So you're going to be gone for a couple weeks then?
Oh no, let's see, what am I up to? I'm on vacation next week. The week after that, I'll probably be here, although I have to go to Pasco County in the afternoon. And then next couple weeks, I'll be here. 4th of July is on a Thursday. So, guys, we can tell you right now, we won't be here 4th of July.
Oh, that's amazing.
I will be outside with the grill, and hopefully everybody else will be also. And we have some more information from Ian here about those crotons. He said they're relatively new, but they're losing most of their leaves. Some are getting new buds, but I'll keep an eye out and add a little more water. Full sun too. They are suffering from, because keep in mind right now, we're not only not getting rain, we're really not getting a whole lot of cloud cover. So your crotons may be out there and they're just getting full sun all day. No rain, highs getting well up into the 90s, And if they're fairly new, that's really, really tough on them. Some extra water would definitely help, like daily going out there with a garden hose or a watering can, giving them some extra water. Um, Now, when we start to get into a rainy season, they're getting fairly regular rain. They should take off and do really well. They can do really well during the summer here, and then as soon as we get into winter, all of a sudden they take a dive again.
Yeah, another thing is if they're relatively new, they're suffering from transplant shock also. You have to
Yeah,
realize that the plants you buy at a nursery have been watered every day. They've got fertilizer in a little pot. They're in the absolute perfect condition for the plant. And as soon as you stick it in the ground, uh, everything that's in the pot starts moving into the ground, and the roots have to move from the ideal situation to what is probably very poor soil if you're like anybody else in Florida, and it takes them a little while to adjust to it. One of the big mistakes people make is that they modify the soil. They put all these wonderful things in, stick the plant in. The plant is really excited about this wonderful spot that it's now in until it's used up everything. And now it absolutely refuses to stick roots out into that terrible plant material that you provided when it's had this wonderful situation. So do not modify the area where you're planting. If the plant can't survive in your soil, you might as well find out now as to wait and find out later. And when citrus was the big thing here, one of the most common problems we would have is people would plant them, giving them everything, and they'd plant them 6 inches or 4 inches deep. Well, a citrus plant, if you put it 2 inches deeper than it was growing, has a good chance of not surviving. So if you put it 4 inches deeper, you've almost guaranteed it won't survive. And as soon as they've used up the amendments, the roots circle the rest of the plant. The roots get big. They squeeze off the entire system feeding the top part of the plant. The plant dies, and it's 3 or 4 years later. Nobody associates it with the fact that it was a planting problem. So
yeah.
it's important that you don't amend things, and that makes it everything go really well when you first plant stuff, but in the long run, it's a mistake.
And the second part of the question here about rock or shell being used to mulch for landscape beds, you can use it. We recommend that you use it in moderation. You don't use huge amounts because that rock and that shell doesn't break down, so it doesn't build the soil up over time, over the years. It can heat up and get really hot. You can use landscape rocks or shells as kind of an accent spot. And a lot of times the shells, as they break down over the years, they can really raise the pH of your soil. Same with if you're using limestone rock, because that's what lime is powdered limestone rock. That's what we use to raise pH. So that can throw the pH off also. So rock and shell, I think, can look very, very attractive if it's a part of a well thought out landscape design or bed, especially out back by the pool. You have the gardens, you want to make them look really, really good, but just use them in moderation. Teresa put up a link to the fact sheet on Florida Friendly Mulches here to give you some other ideas. And as we start to wind it down here, Linda's magnolia does not bloom. Any ideas why that might be?
How old is it? What kind is it? Yeah.
Magnolias, just as a general rule, from what I see in people's front yards, they either look really good or a lot of times they'll start to look really bad. If your magnolia is losing a lot of leaves and growth from the very top, it's probably a root problem. Um, if a magnolia is in your yard and you have lawn around it and you water the lawn and you fertilize it with turf grass fertilizer and you have a service spraying for weeds, that can all impact and affect any tree. Magnolia, oak, um, hollies are especially susceptible to herbicides, so that could be an issue also. Magnolias probably are going to bloom really well one year, the next year not as well. So it can be an alternating flowering issue. So there's a lot of possibilities for magnolias. Here we go. The magnolia is surrounded by pine trees. So if it is in a woodsy environment, so on your property, but more in the woods as opposed to in the middle of your front lawn, um, might not be getting enough sun, enough light. Magnolias do. If we all go out on a hike in Hernando County today, you're going to see pine trees. You're going to see magnolias out there growing in the forest also. So they can survive, with other trees.
One other thing is that if this is a native magnolia, they don't bloom like the uh, custom varieties. So if you have one of the name varieties with the brown under part of the leaves, and those have been uh, bred to have a lot of showy flowers. If you have the native, which has the green leaves, green and silver instead of green and brown, they're not very showy. You get a few flowers, but you don't really get uh, the big showy flowers. Okay, um,
Again, it's
it's
not going to
very,
flower consistently the same
yeah,
each and every year.
yeah. Do you know whether it has the green leaves, green silver, or is it green brown? If it's green brown, it should flower at least every other year if it's been there that kind of age. If it's green silver, it may be flowering just a few flowers, which is kind of natural for the native uh, magnolias, and it really isn't a problem. It's just not showy. By the way, one other thing about magnolias is that they suffer damage really quick when you limb them up. Uh, Green silver. That's not going to be a showy plant. That is pretty much the native magnolia, and it'll only have a very few flowers, and they aren't showy. You won't see them. Uh, the one with the brown leaves uh, gets the really big red pods all over the plant, and uh, you see a lot of woodpeckers in eating the seeds, and it's white showy flowers. Uh, but you're just not going to get that with the green silver version. They're only a few. But you do not want to limb up. It's hard to mow under a magnolia tree. So people let the branches get to be about 6 inches, and then they go out with a chainsaw and they start cutting off the bottom row of branches so they get it up far enough they can mow under it. Very, very bad for magnolia. A lot of times that causes really serious problems.
Proper pruning is very important. And I've had neighbors who go out who have a magnolia in the front yard, and all they have is what do you have? He had a reciprocating saw. So he goes out there and just started whacking away at branches. No idea where to cut the branch, how to cut it, just whackety whack. And boy, it was a mess. And I had another one who went out there and pruned their magnolia tree with a machete. We don't recommend that. Number one, it's dangerous. Number two, it's going to give you a horrible cut. And Sarah asked about pruning here also. If you guys go, and let me go ahead and show this again. If you go to Hernando County Government's YouTube channel and look through those Florida-friendly landscape classes, and also the extension classes. We have a lot of recorded classes on proper pruning, tree maintenance, tree pruning, all those topics. Very, very popular topic. We've done a lot of classes on that that go through it step by step. And I'm sure Teresa's looking up University of Florida publications on proper pruning. So each different thing you have is going to be pruned a little bit different. A magnolia tree and an azalea bush and a peach tree, they're all going to be pruned differently, but we have information on all of them.
Yeah, peach trees are probably the one plant that is mispruned most of the time. That's a plant that really needs a particular style of pruning, and if you are not familiar with how it's done, you really need to read the publication because the plants do much better. I mean, 10 times better if they're pruned properly. So
Mm-hmm.
they have such a short life here anyway that if you really planted to get peaches and you want peaches, you need to have it pruned correctly, and uh, that's a
You,
toughie.
you should prune it so it looks like a great big wine glass. So very, very important. You start when it's young. You take off that top main leader. You chop it off. It's going to get side branches. You want them to come up and make like a wine glass and keep it fairly empty in the center. Lots of sunlight, fresh air, sunshine, breeze blowing through it. If you're ever wondering about those things, if you go to I don't know if we have any right around here, but I know they're in Central Florida. You pick peach places. Oh, there is one in Pasco County we've been to. So go to a well-run you pick farm for peaches or whatever you're growing, blackberries, blueberries, whatever it might be, and get an idea of how they do it, how it should look. Hopefully, they're doing it correctly. And like I said, look up University of Florida publications. If you Google Ask IFAS, that's Ask IFAS, that's University of Florida fact sheets. And you can type in a little search box whatever you're looking for. Boom, they give you a listing of all the publications on it. So we got them on pruning landscape trees and shrubs. We have recorded classes. We have structural pruning. So that's very important for fruit trees. Got to start them young. And that'll put you all right on the right track for starting off on the right foot. You know, a lot of times we'll speak with people and they say, I want to start a big vegetable garden, or I want to start a farm, or I want to do this or that or whatever commercially. You need to sit down and look up legitimate resources and read and study and learn the basics and figure out, do I really want to do this? Do I have the money to do this? Maybe I should start with a business plan. That's always a very good idea, and put in some of the groundwork first. We can be very helpful for once you get started. If you run across a roadblock or a problem, or, oh my gosh, I'm growing persimmon trees. I started a persimmon farm or grove, whatever it would be called, and I have brown spots on my leaves. We can help you figure out what that is. It's just really hard for us to tell you in a reasonable amount of time how to start a farm or a persimmon grove or orchard or whatever that would be. You have to put in some legwork and reading and think long and hard. Is this something I want to go into and try doing? If you want to, that's great. But being successful at anything takes a lot of hard work, study, stretching.
We've had a lot of those farms started. There was a big persimmon farm in the eastern part of the county, and the people found it was pretty much a money sink. I don't think that they ended up ever really having a decent year's crop that uh, paid back that year, let alone all the years that it took to get it to where it was a big operation going. But it was kind of sad because here a lot of beautiful trees, a tremendous amount of effort put in. They had several varieties. A couple of the varieties turned out, although they were recommended for this area, they really didn't work well in this area. They had some disease problems that nobody anticipated. So, you have to be really careful when you start talking about doing things commercially. It's like the fellow with the uh, finger limes that he had the right idea, but he had the wrong variety for here.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I mean that there's a reason why so many farms are generational. Why you didn't start the farm, your great granddaddy did, and pass it down through because it's such a wide knowledge base. And then not only do you have to have the base knowledge of the plants, you have to have the base knowledge of your own land, and you have to know exactly what is going on there. And sometimes that takes 80 years of your family working that land to find out exactly what works and what doesn't. Um, you know, Godspeed to anyone deciding to start a farm. That is an endeavor for sure. But most people I know who are farmers, um, their daddy was a farmer, and their grandpa was a farmer, and his grandpa
yeah.
was a farmer.
And it really helps to look to see if is anybody else growing this? Is anybody else
Mhm.
doing this? And that's what
This is probably a reason
amazes me
why
when
they're not.
you're reading about like homeowner vegetable gardens and people want to try growing lettuce in August in the heat of summer or growing this or that, something that grows well here, but at a totally wrong time of year. It's like if you go to your local farm, are they growing it? They're probably not growing, green leaf lettuce in July and August for a reason. And maybe if you read and understand why they're not doing it, you can come up with a workaround. Try it, try growing it hydroponically inside or under shade cloth or water chill or something. You may be able to do it for yourself and your family and figure out a workaround. But please don't assume that, well, in New Jersey we grew tomatoes in from May through August. Nobody does that down here successfully.
Yeah, it's I don't mean to tell anyone they can't do anything, but I don't think you're going to be the first guy to do it because you're definitely not going to be the first that's tried.
And there's an exception to every rule. I guarantee you there is somebody here in Central Florida successfully growing apples. But out of everybody who plants an apple tree here, even if it's the low chill varieties, maybe one out of 100 gets any kind of worthwhile harvest. So you may be that one. You may be the lucky winner, but you may be one of the other 99 that your tree just kind of dies a very, very quick death.
So what we've learned is do not go and try to start a lettuce farm in summer here. Don't put all your eggs in that basket. It's got a
It's like
big hole in the
avocado.
bottom.
Sure. Well,
Avocados are that way. One guy out of 20 gets an avocado tree. 19 people get to watch it die or not ever produce anything. So, but they keep trying it, and because they keep trying, occasionally somebody discovers something that works. So,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
all for the trial. I'm just not for thinking that you're going to get rich commercially until we know for a fact that it works.
and we got pretty much one final question here from Bassem. His mango tree quit fruiting. What can he do to make it fruit again? If it quit fruiting, like it didn't fruit this year at all, flower or fruit, that's a problem. Mangoes, I know in further South Florida, I think Bassem lives in Seminole counties. He's kind of pushing the envelope with mangoes there. They generally flower in the late winter, early spring. Mangoes get bigger. You're going to pick them around now, I think.
Yeah.
I'm picking them in South Florida. Um, Mangoes can have problems where they flower really well one year and not as well the next year. It's alternating flowering and fruiting, which is not unusual. If your mango tree is otherwise healthy and growing well, if it did not if it didn't fruit this year, wait and see if it fruits well next year before you start making any specific decisions to get rid of it or not. If it has an underlying problem, a fungal disease, an insect problem, diagnose it and take appropriate action. But yeah, Seminole County is really kind of pushing. He said no flowers, so I assume that's no flowers this past spring.
Yeah. Some of those plants that are grown commercially, in order to get a crop every year, they're treating them with hormones because it's like citrus. Citrus produces good fruiting maybe 3 out of 5 years naturally, and a couple of off years. So if you're in the commercial business, they go in and they hit them with some hormone stuff, some chemicals, and they produce every year. Well, I get calls, people complaining, that the commercial guys have got great fruit every year, and I'm not getting it. I had a terrible crop this year. Well, that's the nature of the beast. So uh,
Yeah,
I'm
they
not
have
saying that
tools that
mangoes
aren't
are that
available to
way,
homeowners.
but it's very possible that if it's not a fruit every year plant, that the commercial guys are in fact spraying it with something to keep it going.
And Teresa put a link to a very good blog post about why do my mango trees not produce many fruits each year. That is from St. Lucie County, which is much more South Florida than Seminole County is. So the information would still apply, but you need to remember that you're throwing possibility of cold damage into the mix also. And if your mangoes get cold damage, that's going to really impact the flowering and fruiting. Although this past winter, I wouldn't think that you really suffered much cold damage in Seminole County. I know we really didn't in Hernando. Did you see anything frozen this year, Bernie?
We had 3 hours below 28 degrees once. We had two hard freezes besides that. So altogether, we had three, not hard freezes, hard frosts. We had one freeze and two hard frosts. So, uh, and people another 5 or 6 miles east of me had a couple of hard freezes. So, uh, the farther east you went in the county, the more damage you got. But only 3 hours at 28 degrees. I didn't lose anything from it. The frost damage on the very first frost was probably the worst damage I had. After that, I didn't have any more. But if you have a frost when plants are first starting to set buds, uh, some of the plants that ends the fruiting season.
Yeah. And that is enough to disrupt those tropical fruits, the mangoes, the lychees, all the other South Florida things. So hopefully the lack of flowering is just a temporary problem just for this year, and it'll perk back up and do better next year. So let me show everybody's contact information here if you want to contact us with any further questions, pictures, whatever it might be. And this is Colby's link tree, which has links to contact him and everything else with Florida friendly landscaping.
Mm-hmm. Rainbow workshops, that type of stuff. We also have a event that we're, I guess, technically bringing it back. We haven't done it since Lily was here. Kind of a water conservation awareness type thing. I'm still trying to come up with a little bit catchier of a name, where we'll have, donuts and coffee and stuff here at the utility office, and we'll talk about, how to conserve water. So that's going to be coming up next month. So please stay on the lookout for dates and times in all.
Was that the Friday, June 28th event?
I think so.
I think it is, yeah.
Let me consult the. Yes, so Friday, June 28th.
Okay.
Bill will be there.
I'll be there. I'm not sure what I'm doing yet. You're going to have to clue me in, but I'll be there.
Buddy, you're not alone. We're still
okay. I
figuring out.
don't feel bad being in the dark then.
No,
And
no.
Sarah wants to know: is the compost class still going?
Yes, the next compost class, which if you visit that link tree, it hasn't been posted yet, but if you visit Linktree, about 10 minutes after this ends, I'm going to turn it on, and you can sign up for it. The next one is.
Next one's the evening class, I think.
Yes, it is Monday, June 24th at 5 p.m.
Monday, June 24th or Friday, June 21st?
Oh my goodness. I have both. I have them clued on both. I have two events with identical. I have them both.
Okay, guys, we're going to work really hard on straightening out our schedule. So.
Oh my goodness. Okay, then pause on the sign up. You'll see it posted. You'll see it posted when we get it straight.
See, everybody gets a behind the scenes look at how we organize this stuff here.
Normally this doesn't happen. I promise.
I was going to say that is not what occurs. But I do like the idea of having a compost class. The absolute best growing medium there is compost. Has everything you need, including the naturals, the little living things that make it all available to the plant. So there is nothing that you can use that's any better than compost.
Hey guys, looks like it's about that time. As a matter of fact, we ran a few minutes over here. So thank you so much for joining us. For anybody watching a recording of this presentation, please feel free to reach out to us with any questions you might have, lawn and garden questions. And we will be back here again next Thursday morning at 10 a.m. to answer your lawn and garden type questions and chat about whatever is going on with the weather and the world and everything else. And thank you so much, everybody, for showing up here live and in person. And until next week, everybody take care. See you then. Bye.